Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Remnant Christian Book Reading Channel. Today, we're going to be doing two chapters of The Oath. The Oath. So, we're going to be doing chapters 4 and 5 today. Two chapters. Now, if it was a shorter book, these two chapters would be considered an extreme marathon because I bet you it's going to end up at 2 hours long. But let's see what happens. So, without any further ado, if you don't remember anything that happened last time, go back, refresh your memory if you can. Get your popcorn, get your milk, your Coca-Cola, your Pepsi. Pepsi on top. And whatever you need to get comfortable because today it's going to be a doozy. It's going to be a lot. So, with that being said, oh Lord, let's go ahead and get ready for the oath. Jonathan came to our home in the early hours of Wednesday, April 9th, after riding most of the night. He was badly beaten. His clothing was torn, and he was bleeding from his mouth and nose. We took him to the doctor immediately and found that his nose and jaw were broken as well as 3 ribs. Jonathan told us that 4 men from the mining company had assaulted him as he returned home from the mine, and that the attack was retribution for something he had said about the company's owner, Benjamin Hyde. When we asked Jonathan what he had said to warrant such punishment, he would not tell us, for fear of being attacked again. From a letter written by Clara Beth Atkins, Jonathan's mother, to her sister Claudia Dunsmith of Oak Springs, dated April 12th, 1880. Ooh. Chapter 4. Hyde River. Deputy Tracy Ellis parked her patrol car in one of the slots outside the sheriff's department in West Fork. Some pages from her notebook filled with fresh notes and her mind full of ideas. She'd just turned 30, and although she'd gotten away from Clark County, particularly Hyde Valley, long enough to attend college and the police academy, it hadn't been long enough to lose the instinct she had about this place. She knew the people. She'd grown up with many of them and now patrolled the valley as a deputy. Something was brewing in Hyde River. She was sure of it. The Clark County Sheriff's Department was located in one of the West Fork Village vintage stone and brick buildings across the street and a few blocks down from the courthouse. On the main floor, just inside the front door, was the front office where the public could talk to whichever deputy was scheduled to man the front counter. Around the corner from the front office was the examining station for driver's licenses. The same deputy handled that, too. Just behind the front office was the cell block with its 3 jail cells. A rack of handcuffs handily located on the wall next to the steel door. Across the room from the front counter was the office of the county sheriff, Lester B. Collins, a man known and mostly liked for his laid-back practicality. His self-written job description was to keep the peace so people could go about their business without too much commotion. That didn't mean he always enforced the laws as written, but he did keep the peace, so folks didn't mind him too much. By now, he'd been reelected so many times, he'd become an institution in Clark County. At the moment, he was well planted in his chair, reading some arrest reports and playing with a rubber band stretched around his fingers. He was still lean and fit in his early 50s, with a stony face and short-cropped hair that made him look like a Marine, which he had never been. No matter, he liked conveying the image of a tough cop, a quality even his deputies were known to debate behind his back. His office door was open, as it usually was. Tracy knocked on the door jamb and he looked up. Come in and close the door. Tracy followed his order, then sat down, her notebook and case folder in her lap. Collins was reading through a report and shared the news. Phil Garrett got his ear nearly bit off last night. They stitched it back on, but the doctors don't know if they can save it or not. Tracy wasn't surprised, but she couldn't keep herself from smiling at the thought. Well, at least it could only happen one more time. The ear part. Was it down at the logger? Where else? I've got a warrant out for... He looked through the papers on his desk. Ever hear of Stack Morris? Tracy shook her head. Collins was bothered. Neither have I. I'm not even sure what he looks like. Or used to look like before last night. Phil Garrett won't be hard to spot from now on. Collins allowed himself a quick chuckle. Anyway, what have you got? Tracy referred to her notes. A lot of weird pieces that aren't coming together. I think the bear attack theory's in trouble, and Steve Benson isn't comfortable with it either. Collins took that news with some concern. Why? What'd he say? The autopsy on 318 was inconclusive. Collins waved that off. Well, what do you expect almost 2 days after the mauling? That doesn't mean the bear didn't do it. The coroner seemed satisfied. Tracy gave a small sigh. Collins always preferred the easiest road. Well, I'm not saying I won't settle for the bear theory, but there are some other matters I'd like to see resolved before I do. I talked to Evelyn Benson this morning, and she admitted she and the victim had been having marital problems. Collins raised one eyebrow. They'd have to be pretty severe marital problems, don't you think? Give me a chance to say it all, Tracy thought. There's more. It turns out Cliff Benson's no stranger to Hyde Valley. He'd been in the valley on and off for the last 3 months, and he spent quite a bit of time in Hyde River, supposedly doing photo shoots. Supposedly? Tracy hesitated before spilling her next few pieces of news. The night of the attack, Harold Bly kicked Maggie out of the house. I understand it was a substantial blow-up. Collins digested that a moment. You are stretching it, Deputy. She shrugged. It might only be a coincidence, I know. I would say it is coincidence. Maggie and Harold having a fight is not news. It's the normal state of things. But Tracy kept on. She had to finish. Well, so far, nobody knows what became of Maggie. But I've gotten word that Levi Cobb is sleeping outside his garage in his camper. Collins sat there silently, playing with the rubber band. Finally, grudgingly, he asked, Deputy, I hope you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. Tracy had to build up to saying it. Sir, Maggie is Harold Bly's wife. If she was having an affair with Cliff Benson, Collins rolled his eyes. I'd rather go with the bear theory. So would I. Then why don't you? At the look of her face, he gave up. He knew she would not be easily dissuaded. All right. Listen, you've got your theories, and that's fine. But give me some hard evidence. Connect at least one loose end for me, and then we can decide if you've got anything. So, he was dumping it all on her. That was easy to do from behind a desk in a town far from the problem. Well, do you think you might talk to Harold Bly about this? The sheriff looked at her disdainfully. About what? About the fact that someone's dead? Who his wife was rumored to be having an affair with? Now, if I was an absolute moron who didn't know how to do my job and didn't care about keeping my job, then yeah, I might butt into Harold's personal business and insinuate that he's a murderer. I'm just trying to. What you have done, deputy, is to make assumptions that could get us all in big trouble if we don't back them up a little better. His tone was condescending as he asked, "Are you following me?" She kept her tone calm and even, but inside she was shaking with anger. "I am trying to find connections in substance, but I have to start somewhere." "Well, sticking my neck out for Harold Bly to chop it off is not the place to start." "I just thought I'd ask." He went back to his rubber band. "So, before we talk about this again, get me some real information. And I mean some hard stuff. Find Maggie. Talk to her. Odds are you'll get nothing but a sob story about their marriage that doesn't have diddly squat to do with anything." Tracy winced. "Which means I'll have to talk to Levi Cobb." Collins gave her a mocking smile. "Hey, this is your case, deputy. Drop it or pursue it. It's up to you. Personally, I'm more comfortable with the bear." "Of course you are, you jerk. Then you wouldn't have to do anything." She came within a hair's breadth of saying it. Instead, she said, "But, Les, you realize Levi knows the rules out there. He isn't going to tell me anything." "Well, I'm sure you'll think of a way to get it out of him." Tracy closed her notebook, trying not to display her frustration. "That's a good girl," he added. The only way Tracy could hide her frustration and anger was to turn quickly and get out of there. Steve managed to arrange a Federal Express pickup of the vial of saliva. The FedEx van came right to Steve's motel room and sent it off to a biochemist friend at the university. It would arrive the following morning, and hopefully he would get some useful information back. Now, for a visit to Hyde River. Steve got into his camper and drove out of West Fork and through the tightening valley, following the winding road as it followed the river. He passed through Able, took the left fork out of the Y, drove on through Nugget and Yellowknife, and he knew he was getting close to Hyde River by the mounds of gravel tailings along the riverbed, the last vestiges of the old gold dredging days. It amazed him a little as he considered a sheriff's deputy like Tracy Ellis driving up into the mountains this far to do her job. Considering how far Hyde River was from the sheriff's department and how short on personnel the department seemed to be, law enforcement had to be more of a word, an ideal, than a reality. Perhaps that explained the little sign Steve saw posted on the front of a house as he first entered Hyde River. An ominous silhouette of a revolver with the superimposed words, "We don't call 911." That about captured it, he thought. They're self-sufficient up here, to put it mildly. Everywhere he looked, he could catch the message, "Mind your business." This wasn't a place where county building codes, weed ordinances, or waste disposal regulations carried a lot of weight. People lived as they pleased. He was reminded of Tracy's warning about strangers asking questions. The dogs were out roaming and lying around as if the whole town owned them. The Hyde Mining Company still cast its dismal tombstone shadow over the town, its ramps, rails, tunnels, and towers looking like an ancient and defunct amusement ride. Its old water tower now a weathered pedestal without the tank. Steve thought it Steve thought he caught some stares from some of the people as he drove into town. Could be. His big camper with an out-of-state license plate virtually cried out, "Stranger." When he slowed down, turned off the road, and parked in front of Charlie's Tavern, he was sure he was being stared at. "Well, greetings, folks. I don't want any trouble. How much do you want?" He was confident he could take care of himself. He was just hoping he wouldn't have to. He got out and stood beside his camper for a moment, trying to get a feel for the place. There were quite a few pickup trucks parked outside the tavern, every one of them standing high on big tires and sporting a rifle rack in the back window. It was after 4, quitting time at the mine and probably everywhere else. All the local boys must be gathered here. Contractor types, loggers, miners, outdoorsmen. They would know these mountains if anyone did. He stepped up to the front door. It bore another sign, advertising the grand opening of Charlie's Mercantile, the building right next door, and stepped inside, into the dimly lit den of the town's beer brotherhood. It wasn't a bad-looking place, Steve thought. The bar stretched along the entire length of the left wall, with enough stools for about 10 customers. Behind the bar, the bottles, neon signs, hunting trophies, and beer posters of perfect-bodied women kept the eyes busy. On the far right wall was an impressive stone fireplace with logs smoldering, and in between were several tables, every one of them different, from a 50s-style formica-dropped kitchen table to a rustic one made from log and elk antlers. At the far end of the room, 3 men in well-worn clothes, wide suspenders, and billed caps did slow, cue-chalking laps around a pool table, their beer bottles ready and waiting along the table's edges. In the far corner, a jukebox pounded out a country tune, while video games bleeped and warbled. Steve caught the eye of 2 men sitting at the nearest table. The younger one with his arm around a loosely behaved and tightly dressed blonde. The men were dressed in what seemed to be the Hyde Valley uniform. Checked flannel shirts, billed caps with brand names on the front, usually of beer or chewing tobacco, wide suspenders, and faded jeans. They were carrying on an animated conversation until they saw him. Then they stopped talking and just stared at him. Steve returned their looks and said hi. They said hi back, but nothing else. "Hi," came a woman's voice. Steve looked toward the waitress behind the bar. She was plump and pleasant-faced and wearing a t-shirt that proclaimed, "Timber dollars feed my family." "Hi," he said, and fumbled in his shirt pocket for a business card. "I wonder if you might be able to help me." Aware that the men were watching him, he stepped up to the bar and presented his card to her. "I'm Steve Benson. I'm a wildlife biologist from Colorado State University, and I've been investigating that bear attack that happened last weekend. The man killed up on Wells Peak." She smiled as she read the card and heard his quick resume. The man in the thick glasses who came up behind her wasn't smiling. "What's going on, Melinda?" She started to answer. "This is—" "Who'd you say you were?" he demanded. Melinda passed him Steve's card, and Steve recited the reasons for his presence again. "Go get Paul a beer," the man ordered, and she went to serve the man seated at the opposite end of the bar. "Mr. Benson, I'm the owner of this place. You got questions, you talk to me." Brother! It was easy to do the wrong thing in this place. "Are you Charlie?" Steve tried to sound friendly, attempting to undo his being a stranger. Charlie read Steve's card again. "That's right. What can I do for you?" Subtitle: "What do you want?" I need to talk to some people who know these mountains. You know, hunters, sportsmen. We're trying to isolate just who or what was responsible for the attack. You don't know yet? He gave Steve a skeptical look. Well, we're not sure. We've got flyers all around town that say it was a bear. Yeah, that's the going theory, of course. Who do you say you're working for? I'm not really working for anybody. I'm just here on my own. What for? To help out with the investigation. A lot of help you are. They already shot the bear, in case you haven't heard. Charlie tossed the card on the bar and turned away. Steve called after him. Charlie. Can I call you Charlie? Charlie busied himself with tending the bar as he replied, I suppose. Charlie, I'm the one who shot the bear. I also did an autopsy on the bear and the findings were inconclusive. Well, if you don't know what you're doing, there's nobody here that can help you. Okay, fair enough. Not another inch. How do you know? Huh? I don't mean to be rude, but perhaps your patrons would like to speak for themselves. Charlie finished pouring a beer for a customer and then returned to take another look at the business card. So you shot the bear, huh? Yes, up along Taylor Creek. You know Marcus Dufresne's? Now Charlie paid better attention. Yeah. You know him? Sure. We went after that bear together. He called it Herman. Charlie was stunned. You shot Herman? Steve nodded. Charlie looked at Steve's card again. So you really do hunt bears? I study them mostly, but sometimes I have to shoot one. How big? What's the biggest bear you ever shot? 800 pounds. A Kodiak in Alaska. Ever shot anything bigger? Now Steve felt like he was obliged to impress the guy. No, I think that's as big as I've killed. Charlie took a moment to think that over. Steve heard a voice behind him. You having some trouble, Charlie? It was one of the men from the front table, the bigger, older one, stepping into the situation. His friend and the woman were watching, and no doubt he was aware of it. Charlie looked Steve over again as if trying to decide the answer. Mister, are you going to order anything? Steve knew he'd better answer. Yes. A beer would be fine. Charlie looked at the big guy standing there. No trouble. The big guy was still eyeing Steve suspiciously, wanting trouble. He was a rugged man with stubble on his face and beer on his breath. He was leaning close, forcing himself into Steve's space, sizing him up. Steve didn't want to fight. It was a waste of time and energy. Charlie volunteered. Doug, this guy studies bears. He's from a university. At that, the man laughed. Oh, a university? That had to mean wimp, Steve thought. So, what are you doing here? Charlie brought the beer. Steve paid for it and then faced the man called Doug, who hadn't budged from his spot. He took time for one swallow of beer, then formally introduced himself and his reason for being there. It was a bear, Doug said. It happens around here. Then he stood there, waiting for Steve to agree and leave. But we still need to know which bear. We shot Herman, but do you know of any other bears besides Herman who might be responsible? Have you or any of your friends sighted any other bears around that aren't afraid of people or like to raid campsites? Steve was asking about bears, but hoping some other sliver of information might come out. Anything at all. Doug just shrugged. Steve looked at the other man, still seated with the woman. Hi, I'm Steve. I'm Kyle, answered the young man. Then he gestured with his beer bottle toward the woman. This is Carlotta. Steve nodded toward the woman, and she cocked her head and looked over him warily. Steve turned back to Kyle. What do you think, Kyle? Never had anything like this happen around here before? Kyle seemed a bit unnerved by the subject. Sure, I haven't seen anything, but there's plenty of people around here who have. They just don't talk about it much. Shut up, Doug snapped. What'd I say? Just don't say anything, Doug roared, and Kyle fell silent. Steve raised his arm slightly in quiet diplomacy. Fine, fine. No offense intended. Come on, Doug, Carlotta beckoned. Just leave him alone. Doug rejoined her and Kyle at the table to finish his sandwich and beer, but not before giving Steve a warning glare. By now, the three men playing pool were watching to see if there'd be any action. The guy named Paul, still sitting at the other end of the bar, only stole sideways glances. Steve asked Charlie, May I sit down? Charlie shrugged. Sit. One of the three pool players took a shot. The balls clacked and rolled, and Paul went back to his beer. Kyle and Carlotta resumed their conversation, and the jukebox kept playing. Doug kept watching Steve. Steve chose a small two-person table a little farther back and close enough to another patron to engage him in conversation. This guy was older, bearded with a large barrel-shaped body and big muscular arms. He sat alone at a hand-hewn burl table, eating a hefty lunch and apparently having a conversation with someone who wasn't there. Steve caught his eye and smiled in a neighborly fashion. Hi. The bearded fellow cocked his head and gave Steve a look that carried a lecture in itself. Mister, he said in a low, gravelly voice. If I were you, I'd settle for the beer. For the bear. Steve made a tiny mental note about how all these people were overstating the obvious. Then he leaned closer and spoke in a quiet voice. But which bear? Do you know of any other rogue bear around here? Some bear fishing game may not be aware of? The man had raised his hand to say, hold it. You're in the wrong place to be asking a lot of questions. If Herman did it, then let it go at that. He turned back to his lunch and prepared to take another bite of his sandwich, not looking at Steve as he said, You push this thing any further, you'll get people riled. What if more innocent people get hurt? Steve countered. The man took a large bite of the sandwich and chewed for a moment before remarking through the wad in his mouth, Ain't nobody innocent. Listen, the man who was killed was my brother. That registered. The man's eyes narrowed as he looked away and muttered, Oh boy, we're in trouble now. Slap! Steve felt a powerful hand on his shoulder, twisting him around. It was Doug. I don't think he wants to be bothered. The bearded man protested. Doug, I can speak for myself. Not to him, you're not. Then Doug said, sideways to Steve, You don't want to talk to him. He's the town nutcase. The man put down his sandwich and placed his ham-sized hands on the table, ready to get up. Well, maybe he'd like to be the judge of that himself. Steve stood, as tall as Doug, if not taller, and this time he invaded Doug's space. Hey, I'm not looking for trouble. I just need information, that's all. And I'll thank you to let me go about my business. Doug had found his excuse. He grabbed a fistful of Steve's shirt and backed him against the post, knocking a picture to the floor. I'll give you information, Professor. Now the pool players were watching again, and Paul turned completely around on his bar stool. Steve's arms came from somewhere Doug wasn't expecting and restored a comfortable distance between them, landing Doug across the table. Doug was startled, but he got up from the table slowly, looking about, wanting to be sure the other patrons had seen it all. They had. The mood of the place shifted like the flipping of a channel. The stranger had crossed the line. The pool game broke up as the pool players moved in, their cue sticks in their hands. Hey! hollered Charlie, running from around the bar. Now hold on, everybody. Doug righted himself, but didn't charge. He was waiting for the reinforcements to gather. Steve looked the pool players over, now standing with Doug, their faces full of confidence and malice. Now, listen. There's a proper way to settle disputes, Steve said coolly. The biggest pool player exchanged an incredulous look with the others. I think he's telling us what to do. Now, Kyle joined up. 5-1. Doug advanced to give Steve a shove, but Charlie stepped in. All right, now, let's break this up. Doug pushed Charlie away. Stay put, Charlie. We'll be done in a second. Steve braced himself, estimating the force of their weight against his own. He figured he would most likely lose, and it would hurt, too. Told ya, said the big bearded man, coming alongside to stand with him. Stay out of this, Levi, Doug warned. This isn't your fight. Levi stood his ground, his big arms loose and ready. 5-1 is no fight at all, Doug. Just then, a cowbell over the front door jangled as the door opened and sunlight entered the room. Doug didn't charge, and neither did Kyle. The pool players lowered their cue sticks, disappointment clouding their faces. Steve had his back to the door, and he wondered who they were staring at, but he wasn't about to turn and find out. Then Steve heard a familiar voice. Can't you boys play a little more quietly? For a minute, I thought I heard some trouble in here. Steve stole a glance toward the door. There stood Deputy Tracy Ellis in a casual pose, her hand on the latch of the open door, the sunlight from outside illuminating her olive uniform, her gleaming badge, and that gun on her hip. Hey, Tracy, Doug greeted her, his tone suddenly civil. Buy you a beer? Her eyes went cold as she looked at him. No thanks, Doug. She looked at Charlie, who had gone behind the bar. Again. These guys giving you trouble, Charlie? Charlie looked at his regular patrons and smiled sheepishly. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a gentleman's dispute. Yeah, said Kyle. We're okay. Just shooting pool, said one of the players. Tracy digested that a moment, carefully studying all the looks of innocence. Finally, she smiled. Then one of you liars get me a Coke. Laughter broke the tension. Tracy sat on a bar stool, and every man returned to his place. Levi sat down to finish his lunch, but Steve remained where he was, still in defense mode. A glare from Doug served as a reminder that the trouble, though contained for now, still remained. Charlie brought Tracy a can of Diet Coke. She popped it open, then turned. She looked at Steve with a smile that bordered on amusement. Why don't you have a beer, Professor Benson? Professor Benson? Oh, she was one of them now, and he was the outsider. I already have one, Steve said, and took his seat again, with all eyes on him. He could see Clark County Sheriff's Deputy Tracy Ellis was enjoying this. This was her turf, her big, wide comfort zone, where she knew the ropes and had the authority, and Steve didn't. Well, go ahead, little lady, and play your game. I don't need to. Steve took a swallow of beer because he wanted to, not because she had suggested it. So, Charlie, how's the fishing? Tracy asked, and Charlie began to report on conditions up and down the Hyde River. One of the pool players gave his input on which flies were working and where, and Paul at the end of the bar boasted about a 25-inch cutthroat he landed just above the mill, wherever that was. Things were lightening up, and Steve could guess that was exactly Tracy's intention. She was fitting right in, deftly handing the local subject matter and even the level of the language. She and these hunks must have all gone to school together. Doug was the only one who wouldn't join in. He downed the last suds from his beer, slammed the bottle down, got to his feet, and strode over to the cash register to settle up with Charlie. Then he left without a word or a look back. Tracy kept talking to the others, but Steve noticed that her smile seemed forced. Then she set the Coke can down so hard it crinkled. Back to work, she ordered herself. She got off the stool and came over to Steve, speaking in a voice all the patrons would hear. Dr. Benson, if you finished your beer, I'd like a word with you. Outside. That seemed to have the desired effect on the pool players. Steve was in trouble, and they were smiling about it. She turned to Levi, who was just finishing his lunch. Levi, isn't that your Dodge truck out there? Yeah, still is. Your license tags are expired. I'll have to proceed on that. Come on. Levi got up from the table, left a tip, and put on his big cowboy hat. The pool player snickered. Tracy stopped short. Something funny? They turned dumb and couldn't seem to think of a thing. Steve and Levi went to the cash register without a word, and Charlie rang them up. Tracy leaned close while Charlie counted out change. Charlie. Tracy stole a glance at Carlotta and Kyle. Carlotta was sitting very close to Kyle, her hand on his forearm. Tracy spoke quietly, but that didn't hide her anger. You're the one responsible for what goes on in here. If Carlotta wants to ply her trade, then I'd better not see it. Because if I see it, then I have to do something about it. You understand? That threw Charlie off balance. He looked at Tracy, then at the couple at the table, and then back again. Sure, Tracy, I understand. Outside, gentlemen. They went outside. Steve, wait here. So now he was Steve again. He waited by his camper. She was the cop, and after all, she saved him a bruising. Levi walked along, not saying a word, and Tracy was glad of that for now. She needed time to figure out how she could talk this guy out of some information, but only the information she wanted. Levi was always glad to offer information on the spiritual state of things without being asked, but certain Hyde River secrets you couldn't pry out of him. He was a product of this town, and he knew the rules and lived by them. They came to Levi's truck, the current tags plainly visible on the license plate. Levi bent to take a closer look, then tilted his hat back a little and spoke kind words to his truck. Well now, Joseph, you haven't let me down. I knew I put those tags on there. He patted his truck on the hood, and then, having caught on to Tracy's ruse, he planted his back against the front of his truck, folded his arms, and waited to hear what this was all about. Levi, I've got a problem, she said, taking out her ticket book and a pen. Well, your eyes aren't too good, he said. That irritated her. I have to talk to you, and I need an excuse. Levi looked over her shoulder, and they're watching us right now. Are you serious? Almost all of them. Tracy spun around. Charlie, Melinda, Paul, Kyle, and the pool players were all leaning out or standing totally outside the tavern door, waiting to see Levi Cobb get a ticket. Go on, she hollered, waving them back. This doesn't concern you. They smiled, snickered, then went back inside. They were satisfied Levi was really being ticketed. Some stole a cold glance at Steve, still standing by his camper, but nothing else developed. Tracy kept her ticket book in her hand and pretended to scribble in it. You know about that bear attack, I suppose? Oh, we all know about it. Jerry Fisk spread his pink leaflets all over town and everybody's upset. Well, we're having trouble with it, Levi. We think it might be something else other than a bear attack. He showed no response, but Tracy knew his ways. He could be unimpressed or uninformed, or he could be hiding something. Levi, I heard Harold and Maggie Bly have split up. Is that true? Harold will be the one to answer that. Tracy checked to see if anyone was close before she said, "He lied to me." Levi thought that over and then nodded in agreement. I need to talk to Maggie, Levi. Do you know where she is?" He sighed, looked at the ground for a moment, then back at her. "I can't talk about Maggie Bly." "But you know where she is, don't you?" He wouldn't answer. Tracy liked that. Levi couldn't lie, so his silence revealed a great deal. She hammered again. "Don't you?" He only looked at her squarely in the eye. His arms crossed, he asked, "Any other questions?" Few people could get under Tracy's skin, but Levi seemed to have a knack for it. "Don't give me that garbage, Levi. You've been sleeping in your camper for the last several days, ever since Maggie got kicked out of her house. Isn't that right?" "If that's a crime, arrest me." "Levi," Tracy said, her tone forceful, "I'll get right to it. That bear attack may have been a murder." Levi looked down. All she could see now was the top of his hat. "And as for that man standing there by the camper, who just about got his butt whipped, that's the dead man's brother." Levi didn't look up as he said, "Yeah, he told me that." "The dead man's wife could be a suspect. You follow me?" She wished she could see his face and get a clue as to what he was thinking. He wasn't saying anything. Maybe he was considering her words. She spoke quietly, knowing she was venturing onto thin ice. "We know Cliff Benson's been seen around here a lot the past few months. We know the Bensons were having marital problems. Now, if Cliff Benson had a particular reason for being here that Maggie might know about, then she might know something else that could keep Miss Benson out of a lot of trouble. Personally, I don't think she's guilty. A woman acting alone wouldn't have the strength to cut up a body the way Benson's was cut up. But she had a weapon. She had motive. And she had opportunity. So this isn't just Maggie and Harold's problem. Evelyn Benson's husband is dead. And that makes it Evelyn's problem." Then Tracy shot a glance over her shoulder at the tall professor standing by his camper. "And that makes it Steve Benson's problem, too. Right? Now, I saw you standing by him back in the tavern. If you think you're such a great Christian, then you'd better stand by him now." Levi was a religious man. Overly religious, in her book. And he was hoping she could use that for leverage. Her challenge did seem to give him pause. He looked at her, looked at Steve, thought it over, and finally sighed resignedly. "It's going to be up to Maggie. I'll ask her if she feels like talking, but that's all I can do." Steve saw the short conference end with Levi getting into his truck and driving off without a ticket. When Tracy returned, she offered no explanation, only more orders, spoken so only he would hear them. "Get in your camper and follow me, but try not to look like it." He replied in an equally quiet tone, "I guess I owe you some things." "Try to look like I'm lecturing you because I am. One thing you need to get straight, Dr. Benson, sir, is that I don't give warning without reason. I grew up here. I know the people and I know how they think. You don't. I hope you're a little wiser now." "Where are we going?" "To Levi Cobb's garage. Hopefully we'll get some information that will relate to your brother's death." Then she gave him a whimsical look. "And you'll get another glimpse of the Hyde River's mentality. I'm sure this is a different kind of place, Steve. The people can be real backward." "Or very forward." "And let me brief you on Levi Cobb. He seems normal enough to look at him, right? He has his garage here in town. He does contract work for the county on their trucks and heavy equipment. And even goes to the little church up on the hill. But you're going to find out he's a little Off. He's a religious nut, for one thing. He likes to preach, and he likes to have deep discussions with. She hesitated. With cars and trucks and machinery. They're his kind of people. On top of that, he's full of the old valley superstitions. What superstitions? You'll see what I mean. Let's go. Tracy got into her patrol car and took off. Steve waited a minute, then got into his camper and followed. Got into his camper and followed Tracy's patrol car as she drove past the old red brick fire station with the gas pumps out front. Levi was already there waiting for them. Tracy stepped forward, still question on her face. Levi answered. She'll talk to you. He looked warily at Steve. But you'll have to go easy. She's in a sore state. We'll go easy, Tracy said, catching Steve's eyes to make sure he understood. They followed Levi up the steep, narrow stairway to what used to be the fireman's quarters. Now it was Levi's small apartment, modestly furnished but clean. Toward the street was a kitchen and dinette, everything neatly in place. Toward the back was a living room with sofa, two upholstered chairs, and a coffee table. Steve breathed easier for the moment. He'd been expecting something bizarre. Levi stepped to a door, apparently a bedroom, and peeked inside. Then he beckoned to them to come, but put a finger to his lips. They approached quietly. Levi eased the door open. On the bed was Maggie Bly, curled in a fetal position, her fingers in her mouth, her hair matted with sweat, her eyes wild with fear. She lurched at the sight of them. It's okay, Maggie, said Levi. They're friends. Now I am seeing something bizarre, Steve thought. Crazy. Well, let's get into the next chapter, right? Let's get in. Ready? I would never raise the subject except out of my deep concern for your future happiness. I agree that James Hyde is a pleasant enough man when other eyes are watching. But it is widely believed that strange secret practices and beliefs run in the Hyde family. I understand that Benjamin Hyde was a secretive man who long indulged in esoteric, perhaps satanic practices, and I have no reason to doubt his son James participates in the same. But you'll never hear such things discussed openly in Hyde River. But they are no secrets. I hope to travel to San Francisco in the spring. If you can wait until then, I will tell you all I know, and then you can decide whether you will accept his proposal of marriage. From a letter to Beatrice Clemens from her mother Margaret Clemens, dated December 4th, 1902. Deceased, Margaret Angeline Clemens, 42, died May 18th, 1903, while traveling by train to San Francisco to visit her daughter. She is reported to have fallen from the train, but there are conflicting accounts. Obituary in the Oaks Springs Register, May 20th, 1903. Chapter 5. Maggie Bly. Tracy moved forward as if approaching a timid deer, her hand outstretched. Maggie, hi, it's Tracy Ellis. Maggie recognized her and shook her hand. Tracy! Then her eyes looked past Tracy and Steve in horror. Oh my God! Close the door! Levi shut the door, careful not to slam it. The room was stuffy and dark, and no wonder. The windows, even though they had blinds, were boarded up with plywood. If not for the one dimly glowing lamp beside the bed, the room would have been pitch black. The odor of the aging building, its yellowing wallpaper, dust-filled cracks, and seasonal mildew now mingled with the smell of tears, filth, sweat, and something else. Something dead, Steve thought, shuddering slightly. Tracy kept hold of Maggie's hand as she looked toward Steve and spoke gently. Maggie, this is Steve Benson. He's a wildlife biologist, and he's here to investigate what happened on Wells Peak. Steve tried his best not to appear threatening. He stooped down just a bit so as not to tower over the trembling woman and extended his hand to her. She pulled away from both him and Tracy, her eyes locked on him as if he were a predator. You're Cliff's brother! That threw Steve off balance. Who was this woman? Yeah, that's right. He immediately looked at Tracy, hoping for an explanation. How did you know he's Cliff's brother? Tracy asked quietly. Maggie's hand went to her mouth again. She cried through her fingers like a child. You're gonna hate me. Levi stepped forward and touched her shoulder. Maggie, now, these folks don't hate you, not at all. They hate me. No, they're here to help you. We all are. Nobody can help me. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. Tracy met Steve's eyes. See what I mean? Her expression said. Steve was seeing and hearing, of course, but not understanding any of this. I'm no good, Maggie whimpered. No, that's not true, said Levi. You're a precious creation of God. She recoiled at that. No, I'm not. I'm nothing, Levi countered. God loves you, Maggie. No, he hates me. God loves everybody. Harold hates me. He thinks I'm ugly and filthy and dirty. He hates me. Well, you don't have to listen to what Harold says. God doesn't hate you. He's here, Maggie. He wants to help. I'm sure he does, said Tracy, just to bring that topic to a close. But Maggie, we need to ask you some very important questions. Maggie stared at them blankly. Levi offered, Talk to them, Maggie. It'll do you good. Maggie calmed a little, wiping her eyes clear. Tracy smiled to reassure her. Some of these questions are going to be difficult, and I'm sorry, but I have to ask them, okay? Maggie didn't react at all. Tracy tried the first question, asking as gently as she could. So, Maggie, you knew Cliff Benson? Yes, she answered directly. You bet I did. Tracy couldn't hide her surprise at such a direct answer. Steve braced himself. He could sense bad news coming. Tracy probed for it. Were you and Cliff? Were you... We were in love! Maggie blurted as if defending herself. Cliff loved me! He said he loved me! He said he'd get me away from Harold! There it was. Just that quick. Far quicker than Steve could prepare for, much less believe it. It's okay, Maggie, Levi said. You just get it out in the open. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us. Maggie, Tracy cut in, were you and Cliff having an affair? Maggie showed disgust at the word. It wasn't an affair. It was more than that. He was the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me. Oh no, Steve thought. Not Cliff. How long, Maggie? Tracy asked. How long were you and Cliff seeing each other? A couple of months. Until Harold found out? Maggie said nothing. She only nodded. And that's why he kicked you out of the house? Yes. Maggie closed her eyes as if the confession had exhausted her. And now I'm gonna die. Tracy stroked Maggie's shoulder. You're not gonna die, Maggie. We're not going to let anyone hurt you. Maggie opened her eyes again and glared at Tracy as if she said something stupid. Don't you know what happened to Cliff? Tracy lifted her hands. Maggie, no. We don't know what happened to him. That's what we're here trying to figure out. That's why we're here. Maggie sat up on the bed. He got eaten! Eaten alive! Everybody knows that! Now we don't know for sure, Tracy said, as if Maggie had said nothing unusual. Maggie looked toward a boarded-up window as if something lurked outside. And now it's gonna happen to me! This must have something to do with the superstitions Tracy was talking about, Steve thought. And Tracy wasn't kidding. The terror in this woman was so real. It chilled his blood as well. Levi consoled her. It don't have to happen, Maggie. You can get free of that sin right now. And here was Levi's religious quirk. Another thing Tracy had warned him about. Levi. Tracy glared at the man to silence him. Then she turned back to the woman. Maggie, do you know? It was a beautiful thing, she repeated defensively. I don't know what I did. What I did was that was so wrong. Cliff loved me and I loved him and... She looked at Steve. I just wanted to be happy. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I just wanted someone to love me, that's all. Tracy nodded with understanding. I hear you, Maggie. I hear you. Maggie softened as she saw the kindness in Tracy's eyes. You know how it is. Sure I do. Tracy took Maggie's hand again. Harold's been pretty rough on you, I know. I've tried to be good to Harold. Mm-hmm. But he's a mean man, Tracy. He is. And Cliff, he made me feel good. He treated me like I was somebody, like a lady. Now Maggie looked at Steve. She was trying to make him understand. Cliff was a good man, and he treated me right. Trying to be helpful, Steve answered, I'm sure he did. And then felt uncomfortable for saying it. Cliff should have been treating Evelyn right, he thought. I met him at Charlie's, Maggie volunteered. He said he wanted to take pictures of the mining towns, and so I started going with him, showing him around. I liked him right away, and he kept coming back just to take more pictures. Sometimes he didn't take pictures, he just wanted to be with me. Steve didn't know if he could listen to much more of this. Cliff and this woman. It was unthinkable. It was all he could do to hide his shock and disgust as he thought of Evelyn and the boys and what this would do to them. But confession did seem good for Maggie's soul. She was calming down with each new piece of information she shared. Tracy knew it and was determined to draw out more. Maggie, where were you the night Cliff was killed? At home, having a big fight with Harold. And that's the same night he kicked you out? Uh-huh. He found out about Cliff. He was mad. So about what time did he kick you out? I don't know. About 10? Well, that left Harold off the hook, Tracy thought. Unless he had some of his cronies kill Benson, which would be difficult to prove. And that's the last you saw him? Uh-huh. Did you ever meet Evelyn Benson, Cliff's wife? No. So you were never threatened by her? You know what I mean? Maggie shook her head. I never saw Cliff's wife. Did Cliff ever give any indication that his wife knew about you? Or was upset about it? Or might want to get even if she did find out? Maggie shook her head. Tracy, Cliff's wife didn't kill him, I know. Tracy hesitated, braced herself, and asked, What about Harold? Did Harold say he would kill Cliff? Maggie shook her head. Did he say he would kill you? Her eyes became vacant, and she shook her head in despair. He didn't have to. It's just going to happen, that's all. It's only a matter of time. No, it's not going to happen, said Tracy. We're going to get you out of here right now. It won't help. How do you know? It won't help, Levi agreed. The problem's in Maggie's heart, so it goes with her. It don't matter where you move her. Well, it can't hurt to try now, can it? Levi shook his head in frustration. Tracy. Deputy Ellis, she corrected him. Deputy Ellis? That'd just be running, and you can't run from this. Maggie has to get out of this town before she gets hurt, Tracy said in a tone that made it in order. Maggie, would you like to come with me? I'll get you a room somewhere safe, somewhere nobody will know about. Maggie looked at Tracy. Maggie's expression was disbelieving. Levi insisted. It's in her heart, Deputy Ellis. Her sins are gonna follow her no matter where she goes. Tracy put her finger an inch from Levi's nose and snapped. Shut up! I'm trying to. You're only filling her head with crap, Levi. Now, if I'm going to help Maggie at all, it'll have to be in the real world. You got that? We're not dealing with fantasies here. You don't think sin is real? She seemed about to slap him, but reined herself in with great effort and tried to sound calm but firm. Levi, under the present circumstances, if anybody gets her killed, it's going to be you and your stories. So please, just be quiet, all right? Tracy took a moment just to breathe before addressing Maggie again. Maggie, I'll get you out of the valley for a few days. Take you someplace where nobody can find you. Maggie had no answer. I'll come back in a few minutes. If you want to get out of here and come with me, then be ready. Levi, you help her. You understand? He was about to protest. She nailed him with a voice that jolted Steve. You've got another man's wife in your house, Levi, right in your bedroom. I will use that, so help me. Now help Maggie get her things together and have her ready by the time I get back. Is that clear? Levi looked at Maggie and spoke softly. We better do like she says, Maggie. Tracy rose, and following her cue, Steve went with her down the back stairs and outside. Steve was disturbed, brooding, and bewildered all at once. I had no idea. Don't look, Tracy interrupted. But there's a man under that lean-to over there. And I think he's watching us. Steve didn't look as he asked. Watching us? You mean spying? Tracy headed for her car, acting casual, her conversational tone covering the gravity of what she was saying. There are people looking for Maggie, trying to keep tabs on her. Guess they'll be keeping an eye on you, too. And me. Steve managed a corner of the eye glance across a vacant lot, and under a rickety lean-to, a thin little man in blue mechanic's coveralls appeared to be working on an old Willie pickup. That's Carl Ingfeld, said Tracy. He doesn't live there, but that isn't his truck. And I don't think he works for Harold Bly, but Harold's the kind of man he'd want to do favors for. It won't be good that we were seen together at Cops. Tracy finally caught the little man looking their way and waved, shouting a friendly greeting. Hey, Carl! Carl waved back, but not happily, and then walked away, leaving the Willie sitting there with the hood open. Tracy sighed. Well, they know what we're up to. Steve paused by the patrol car. Who is this Harold Bly, anyway? Steve asked. Tracy snickered derisively. He's the local godfather. He owns the mining company in most of the town, and there are some pretty strong superstitions about him and his family. People are afraid of him, and I think he uses that to his advantage. Then she added, and he's not much of a husband, you may have gathered. So you think maybe Harold? Steve, Tracy cautioned. We'll have to talk about this later. Right now, you need to get out of town. I guess you can see there could be more to your brother's death than a bear attack. Which means I have quite a bit of work ahead of me. I lost my spot here. I'm so sorry, guys. All right. Now listen to me. I mean this. My job's going to be hard. I don't need any more skirmishes like we had in Charlie's. But if you know what you're saying, that someone actually did that to Cliff. Steve, I'm not saying anything one way or the other. All I can do is try to find out what really happened and why. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my spot like crazy right now. I think I need to sit up, guys. Sorry. Steve, I'm not saying it another way or the other. All I can do is try to find out what really happened and why, and she considered it a moment. No matter how it all turns out, I know it's going to be ugly through and through, and I'm not going to like it. Well, I certainly don't like it. The whole situation is overwhelming. An understatement deserving a trophy, Steve thought. Tracy nodded regretfully. Just take it one step at a time. Go ahead. I don't know. Talk to Marcus again. By all means, talk to Evelyn. Maybe you'll find out something that'll change the whole picture. I really hope you do. What if this is the work of people? He was trying to sort it out. Maggie said Cliff was eaten. Then he shrugged. She was really out of it, though. I guess she means the bear. Levi obviously told her about it. We'll talk about it later, Tracy said. She opened the door of her patrol car, then looked over the roof at him. Steve? Yeah. Maybe it was a bear. Steve realized there was no comfort to be found in any possibility. No answer would ever be the right one. No answer would ever bring back his brother. Maybe, he said, and opened the door. Stay out of trouble, she said, and got in her car. They drove away in opposite directions. Evelyn still wasn't all there, Steve thought. She'd seemed so, well, like herself the other day, but today she seemed vague and sketchy in her thinking and conversation. She might have a long road back, Steve thought. I have dreams, she said, lying on her back and staring vacantly at the ceiling. They'd gotten around to that night after talking about anything and everything else. He told her he'd been to Hyde River, but he withheld more than he shared. As far as Evelyn knew, the trip to Hyde River had been unfruitful but had raised some other possibilities Steve was going to look into. Evelyn asked no questions, so Steve let it go. He did not tell her what he learned about Cliff and Maggie. He didn't know if he ever could. Now, as Evelyn tried to recall something, anything, she began drifting between reality and he didn't know what. I have dreams that keep coming back. Steve stayed close, listening, but expecting little. I keep seeing a big black thing coming out of the dark, and I hear it. I feel it thrashing around, and I feel blood splashing all over me. She shivered. Steve asked softly, What about people? Are there any people in your dreams? She continued to stare vacantly and slowly shook her head. No. No people. Only a big black thing. What about your knife? Do you fight back? Do you use your knife? Yes. I stab at it. I just keep stabbing. And stabbing. Where is Cliff? Is he in your dreams? Tears came to her eyes as she whispered. No. He's gone. He's gone. And all I see is a shadow where he used to be. The Traveler Motel on Route 16 catered to vacationers traveling south, away from Clark County and Hyde Valley. Tracy knew that few people from Hyde River would ever come this way or notice this place unless they were on vacation, so Tracy had brought Maggie here. Not in her patrol car, but in her own Ford Ranger. Maggie had registered under a false name. Now they were in Maggie's room, number 12. Tracy stood by the door in jeans and a light blue work shirt, the incognito civilian. Maggie sat on the bed. So what now? She asked, timid and bewildered. Just sit tight for a few days. Take some walks down by the lake, see a movie. You need to breathe free for a while. And I need to find out what's going on without having to worry about you. Maggie bent just a little and looked out the window at the sky. He might see me. Maggie, come on, this far away? I don't know. I'll be back tomorrow to check on you. They said goodbye and Tracy drove away. Early that evening, Steve sat in a lawn chair by the little kidney-shaped pool at the Tamarack Motel, thinking, making notes, trying to clarify where things stood and not getting very far. All he could think about was Cliff. the kid brother he would never see again. All he could see before his mind's eye were the memories, some of them so hilarious now. The hot air blimp Cliff tried to make out of laundry bags when he was 14. It flew for maybe 1 minute before it landed on Mr. Sorensen's barn and set it on fire. Cliff spending all his summer earnings on a gutless Chevy with drag slicks and stuck valves. Boy, it looked great, but it couldn't even climb a hill, much less race anybody. Cliff thought it would impress the girls, but it never got out of the driveway. That stupid dock Cliff built out of inner tubes and old pallets. It was his revolutionary design, portable, quickly assembled, quickly torn down, easy to maintain. He was going to get it patented and become a millionaire. You couldn't walk on it. It flipped over the first time they tried. But that was Cliff, always running off half-cocked after some crazy idea and always getting a lecture from his big brother when he got back. They were a pair. The imp and the intellectual. The clown and the straight man. The kid who stayed and the kid. And the older brother who never got to be one. Cliff was 9 and Steve was 14 when their folks split up and their dad moved out of the state. As a result, Steve quickly found himself in the role of a father, skipping his teenage years entirely to look out for his mother and his carefree brother. Cliff almost forced it on him. Whenever he was in trouble, Cliff came to Steve, and Steve was always there for him. But now those days of childhood were long past. Cliff was gone. Killed in an unbelievably gruesome way. And Steve was left alone. And the confusing, devastating present. He began to shake with emotion and turned away from the motel building so that no one would see the tears streaming down his face. After several minutes, he sat back in the chair, wiped his eyes and nose with a handkerchief. I wondered if perhaps Tracy Ellis was right. Maybe he was too close to the situation to be investigating Cliff's death. With such a load of grief and outrage, it was nearly impossible to be objective and clear-headed, and he demonstrated that to himself and to Tracy Ellis despite his best efforts. But what else could he do? With Cliff's death unexplained and unresolved, and now, with foul play being considered, he had to be here. He could do nothing less. He couldn't rest until he had the answers. With a deep breath and a determination to press ahead despite his feelings, he referred to some notes he'd scribbled on the writing pad in his lap. He had discovered long ago that writing things down helped him organize his thoughts, helped him to see what was important, and helped him find solutions. He had written down 3 topics. The killing, the greatest riddle, of course. Tracking down and shooting a rogue bear would have been simple. Now he knew less and had more questions than when he'd started. And worst of all, he might be expected to trust others to solve the whole thing while all he did was sit at home fretting about it. That just couldn't happen. Not as long as... Steve jumped a little. Oh. The motel owner's big tabby cat. That's what it was, letting out a long, low growl. The strange sound that people who didn't know cats were always surprised that they made. From the bushes nearby. Steve settled back into his chair, having demonstrated to himself a secondary burden. His shattered nerves. Next topic. The affair. This topic could be broken down into 2 categories. 1. How the affair could suggest a human perpetrator in Cliff's death, unthinkable though it may be. And 2. How in the world Cliff could be so foolish as to get tangled up with that semi-deranged woman in the first place. How he could be so intoxicated that he gave no thought to what his escapade would do to Evelyn and the boys, and to Maggie Bly's husband. From all appearances which Cliff should have seen, Hyde River was definitely a bad choice of towns for starting an affair, and Harold Bly's wife was definitely the wrong woman. Cliff, you sure did it this time. If only I'd known. He was getting upset again, so he went on to the next topic. the myths and superstitions of Hyde River. Now here was something he knew nothing about, but apparently he'd come close to getting clobbered because of it. If there had been foul play, this would be a factor. Crunch, crunch. A faint sound. Crunch. Steve looked in the direction of the sound and froze in horror at the sight. Under another lawn chair nearby, the big tabby crouched, his face close to the concrete. He was chomping, chewing, licking a large mouse. The lower half of the mouse sat on its haunches, lifeless, rocking to and fro with the cat's jaws. The upper half was gone, snipped off. The lower half ended in a red stump. The bartender at Harvey's Restaurant and Lounge asked Steve if he'd been jogging. Steve only asked for a table in the corner and a stiff drink. He had no recollection of his long run down the road from the motel, and he wasn't entirely sure where he was. He was sweating and breathing hard. He couldn't think. The drink arrived and he gulped it down, the liquor burning his throat. He was still shaking. He couldn't stop. It was dark, enough to get away with spreading a little terror without being seen. So this night, 6 huge men, all wearing black hoods to hide their faces, got together to make a few things abundantly clear to Kyle Figgin. Kyle was bound hand and foot, kicking, squirming, trying in vain to free himself from their iron grip as they carried him like pallbearers, 3 on a side, his body flat out and face down. They rushed along, letting Kyle's head and face take the lead through the tall grass and prickly underbrush until they got to the edge of the river. Kyle was screaming, but his screams were only pitiful squawks through the gag they crammed in his mouth. When they reached the river, they didn't slow down, but splashed headlong into the current until the water rose to their knees and Kyle's face. Then they shoved him under and held him there. Moments passed. Kyle started kicking so hard they could barely hang on to him. "Okay," said the ringleader, who stood by Kyle's head, and they raised him just enough so he could suck some frantic breaths through his half-clogged nose. The ringleader bent to speak to Kyle's ear. "You don't talk to outsiders, Mr. Figgin. Not a word. We just want to make you aware of that. You understand?" Kyle didn't have time to grunt, nod, or scream in answer before they dunked him under the water again and held him there only seconds short of his life. When they raised him up again, he was pulling and snorting air through his clogged nose, desperate to stay alive. The ringleader let go of Kyle's arm long enough, to untie the gag and yank the rag from Kyle's mouth. "Don't scream." Kyle didn't scream. He was too busy breathing and crying, totally repentant. "Don't feel too bad about it, son. We've all been here one time or another. Just don't forget. That's all." With a glance from the ringleader, one of the men holding Kyle's feet cut away the ropes with a knife. Then they dropped him face first into the river and let the current carry him along as he struggled to right himself in the shallow water. His arms still bound behind him, his face dipping again and again under the rippling, splashing surface. It was a good distance down the river by the time he finally got his feet under him and could push, kick, and half float his way to the shore. Then he flopped on the smooth rocks and wept like a child, gasping and coughing, glad to just be alive. By the time he'd recovered, he was alone, without tormentors, but also without help. He'd washed up on the opposite side of the river. Somehow he'd have to cross again to get home, and his arms were still tied behind him. It would be a very long night for Kyle Figgin. Night came, and in the vast mountainous regions beyond the city lights, the darkness was thick and absolute, enfolding the forests, blanketing the valleys, reducing the ridges to the faintest of jagged lines against the clouded sky. The air was cool and still as the sounds of night took their turns. The crickets up close and all around, the frogs farther in the distance, the coyotes howling and chattering in a faraway other world. Fully dressed, Maggie Bly lay on her bed in the dark, her face illuminated by the cold yellow of the motel's yard light. She was looking out the window and listening. The light gave her a sickly complexion, but her eyes were alert and attentive. Her lips betrayed a faint smile, her first in days. She felt at ease, relaxed. Absently, she scratched at an area directly over her heart, while a stain, black and odorous, began to spread in a widening circle, saturating her scooped neck, cotton shirt, and blackening her fingers. She rose from the bed and went to the window, her eyes dreamy and her smile broadening. Then she listened, as if to sweet music, her head swaying lazily from side to side. The dread, the fear, was leaving her. She couldn't help but giggle. Elma and Bertha McCoy sat in the darkened living room of their mobile homes amid TV trays, beer cans, and cigarette butts watching The Late Show, their stony faces lit by the bluish glow of the television. After The Late Show, as they did every night, they would take turns washing up in the bathroom and then go to bed. This was all in the routine, as was the two dogs out front barking at nothing in particular, as they did every night. But something was different. The dog's barking was usually sporadic, background sound that barely registered with the McCoys. But that night, the barking was louder, insistent, continuous. It was enough to force Elmer out of the soft couch and to the window. "Hey!" he yelled. "Shut up out there! Knock it off!" But then he thought he heard singing somewhere out in the dark. Grizz yapped again. "Shut up!" Elmer turned to his wife. "Turn down the TV for a second." She pressed the mute button, and Elmer stood at the window, frowning as he tried to hear the strange sound. Even though both dogs kept barking, Elmer could still hear the singing between their barks. A woman's voice, far away, barely audible, then ever so gradually getting louder. She must be coming up the road toward their trailer. Now Bertha was curious. "What is it?" Elmer only motioned her to be quiet. She got up and joined him at the window. She heard it too. "Somebody out there singing this time of night?" When Elmer recognized the voice, he whispered, "It's Maggie Bly." "No, it isn't," Bertha whispered in denial, immediately clinging to his arm. As they stood there, the voice grew louder, moving eerily up the road. "It's her," Elmer whispered. Bertha clung to him tighter, hurting his arm. It was Maggie's voice, all right, a very good voice, but strange and haunting. She was singing a lonesome country tune about a good man loved and lost, and love never coming again. Then from behind the big cottonwood in the front yard, a silhouette emerged. Maggie Bly. Strolling along the white center line, easy and carefree, singing her mournful song, her hands clutching her heart. It was happening again. Bertha had never seen it. She had only heard about it. Elmer had seen it once and never wanted to see it again. But now, here it was, unfolding before their very eyes, and they stood frozen, their eyes following that silhouette as it moved like an aberration up the road, the song fading like a ghost crying alone in the night. It took only a few moments for Maggie to pass out of sight and for her song to fade, but that was enough. Elmer and Bertha moved away from the window, pulled the shade, extinguished the lights, then dropped to the floor and crawled into their bedroom to hide. Tracy slammed down the phone. She'd heard from a friend in Hyde River, and it was bad news. Where was that phone number? She was wearing an oversized t-shirt and a pair of cut-off jeans, her favorite relax-at-home clothes. The number had to be in her uniform. She ran to the closet, groped through the shirt pocket, and found the slip of paper with the number of the Traveler Motel. She picked up the phone in her bedroom and dialed the number. After 5 rings, it seemed to take forever. She heard a woman's voice answer. "Traveler Motel? Room 12, please." Tracy could hear the hesitation in the woman's voice. Is this, This is Tracy Ellis. Sarah's friend. Sarah was the false name Maggie had used. She's gone, Miss Ellis. She left hours ago and hasn't come back yet. Left? Did she say where she was going? No, I just walked out. I saw her hitch a ride out front. Did she check out? No, she still has the room. Once again, just to be sure. She's not there? No, I've been here all evening and she hasn't come back. Harold, oh Harold. The voice was smooth, sultry. Bly jolted awake, his eyes starting about, his hand moving forward toward the .38 revolver in the nightstand drawer. The bedroom was dark and quiet. Nothing moved. He relaxed a little and released his held breath. The .38 remained where it was. Man, what a nightmare. That voice sounded like it was right in the house. Harold, came the voice again, ghostly, teasing. Sweetheart. Bly sat up in the bed, making sure he was awake. He scanned the bedroom carefully. The dresser, the chair, his clothes slung over the bedpost. All were vague shadows in the dark. Where was she? Should he answer, or was he still dreaming? He sat still and listened. Okay, Maggie, I'm awake now. Let's hear you talk. She laughed loudly and mockingly. That was Maggie, all right, Harold thought. He untangled his feet from the sheets, got out of bed, and looked down from the second-story window. He caught sight of Maggie's silhouette just below the window. Her hair wild and glowing in the light of the moon, her face in shadow. The sight of her made him jump. And she had obviously noticed, for she laughed even more. She'd scared him, and now she was laughing at him. Instantly, his temper flared. He grabbed his pants off the bedpost, and standing at the window, he hurriedly jammed one leg into the pants. So, I caught you with your pants down, Harold. Maggie, I'm gonna tear you apart. Bly was hopping on one foot. I'll tear you apart. You hear me? I just thought I'd stop by and say goodbye, sweetie. She disappeared. He got his pants up to his waist, zipped them up, and stuck his head out the window in time to see her moving lazily toward the road. He ran downstairs toward the front door, hitting a table in the dark, cursing. Maggie reached the street out front and looked for any signs of life. All the old houses were dark, the occupants asleep or at least acting like it. She stooped and grabbed the rock from the road shoulder, then pegged it at the front door of the mining company foreman. Hey! Wake up in there! No response. The house stayed dark. She grabbed another rock and bounced it off the front door again. Now the bedroom light came on. You gotta hear this! The miner and his wife, living 2 doors down, must have heard her too, for their front door squeaked open. She could see their faces, one above the other, peering out through the crack. With a not so subtle rattling and crash, Harold Bly burst out the front door, bare-chested and powerful, holding a shotgun in his burly arms. Another light went on in a neighbor's house and just down the street, and he halted at the top of the steps. People were hearing this, seeing it. Maggie had her back to him. She was still busy rousing the neighborhood. Hey, everybody! Wake up! I've got an announcement to make. Another light came on next door, then the porch light. Miss Cumber, a retired school teacher, poked her head out the front door. In a quick change of character, Bly stashed the gun on the porch and made his way down the stairs, reaching out toward Maggie like a loving husband should, trying to appear calm and collected. He had to get this mad woman inside before she made him look foolish. Now, Maggie, honey, why don't you come inside and let's talk? She turned to face him, a carefree, cocky expression on her face, the strap of her bag over her shoulder, and a slick, black stain down the front of her blouse from her heart to her waist. Bly stopped dead in his tracks. Then he backed up a little. The stain was glistening, growing. He could smell the stench like that of a dead animal. It was obvious she'd been clawing at it, for her hands were blackened, and she had black smudges where she'd touched her face. Bly mellowed. Then he smiled a gloating smile. "Levi, this is Tracy Ellis. Is Maggie there?" "No, ma'am." Trouble. Levi could sense it in Tracy's voice. He could feel fear twisting his insides. "I haven't seen her tonight. I just got a call from somebody in Hyde River. He says he saw her on the road just a few minutes ago." Levi held the phone to his ear and went straight for the front window to survey the road below. "Where'd he see her? What part of town?" Tracy was flustered. "I don't know. He didn't say. He just told me he'd driven past her." "Well, which way was she going?" "Up the road." "That was bad." "Toward Old Town?" "You got it." "How long ago was that?" "About 10 minutes. I'm going after her. If you find her, just get her back to your place, all right? And do it quietly. I'm going out the door right now." "I'll look for you." Levi slammed down the phone and bounded for the stairway, grabbing his jacket off its hook as he passed. Looking at the black and dripping stain over his wife's heart, Harold Bly felt a wonderful sense of intoxication. Power. That's what it was. Real power. Still, he didn't approach Maggie and didn't want her approaching him either. He stood with his arms outstretched to keep her away and spoke gently. "Now, Maggie, I think you should just move on. Just keep going." She cocked her head playfully to one side and said too loudly, "I showed Cliff your office at the mining company. We made love up there. Harold, did you know that?" "Maggie, now calm down." He was acutely aware of the neighbors listening, but she threw back her head and jubilantly shouted into the sky, "Cliff Benson was the most wonderful lover I ever had. Gentle and kind and," she looked at Harold, "a better man than you ever were, Harold Bly." This he hadn't planned. And it wasn't so much what she was saying that started raising his temperature. It was that he couldn't stop her from saying it. "We made love under the 5 Mile Bridge," Maggie announced to the world, "and up on Wells Peak. We even got a motel a few times, but that wasn't like doing it outside, you know." Steady, steady, he told himself, keeping his hands by his sides, even as they clenched into quivering fists. He wanted to smash in that laughing, mocking face, but her face was streaked with black slime, and he dared not touch it. She could tell. "Can't touch me, can you, Harold?" "Well, nobody can. Not anymore. I can do what I want, go where I want, be with whoever I want. It doesn't matter anymore. Not anymore." Harold said it quietly, but his tone was vicious. "Maggie, you shut up right now and get out of here." She actually sneered at him. "When I'm ready, Harold. When I'm ready. Nobody tells me what to do. I'm free, Harold." He no longer cared how much attention he attracted. He ran up the porch steps for his shotgun, grabbed it, and turned back toward the street. But she was gone. Across the street, the miner and his wife slammed their door shut and extinguished the porch light. Bly went down the front steps slowly, carefully, starting to lose the resolve his anger had triggered. He looked up and down the street. There was no sign of Maggie. She might be hiding, he thought. Perhaps she fled. He took one step toward the street and then another, listening, peering into the dark. He noticed Miss Cumber duck inside and turn off her lights. The company foreman's door slammed, and the bedroom light went out. Up and down the street, lights winked out, windows closed, doors clicked shut. Darkness and silence returned to the neighborhood. Bly stood there alone on the dark street for a moment, suddenly realizing he should be pleased at his neighbor's behavior. The dark houses, the closed shades, the slamming doors. They really were scared, weren't they? That brought a cunning smile to his face. Sure, he thought. Maybe it was best that the neighbors heard everything. By tomorrow, the messy little scene they'd witnessed would mean a whole lot more, and they'd all be talking about it. Then the talk would spread, and the whole town would get a strong message. A message they'd never forget. From down the hill came the roar of a vehicle. Now what? Bly asked. Soon, headlights appeared around the corner, sweeping across the faces of the old houses. Bly let the shotgun rest innocently at his side as he backed away from the street. The big Dodge caught him in its headlights and rumbled to a halt right beside him. The window was rolled down. Evening, Mr. Bly. Harold's tone was not friendly. Hello, Levi. Levi had spotted the shotgun, of course. Some kind of trouble? No. I thought I heard some coyotes. Levi looked up the hill toward the forest beyond the town, then back at Harold. He seemed edgy. I heard your wife was out wandering through the town, Mr. Bly. I was wanting to make sure she was okay. Bly smirked at that. So, you've lost track of your roommate. Is that it? You know I haven't touched her, Mr. Bly, and I've tried to be careful about appearances. Not careful enough. Have you seen her tonight? Has she come by here? No, I haven't seen a thing. Levi gave him a good hard look before saying, Then I'll be on my way. He put the Dodge into gear. Hope you bag a cowed? The truck lurched forward, did a U-turn, and roared back down the hill toward the highway, the night closing in again behind its red taillights. She'd been by her home all right. Levi could read Harold Bly's face like a billboard, and his lies, too. She had to be heading for Old Town. Levi drove slowly, scanning both sides of the road, straining to look back into the trees. No sign of her. Either she'd made a remarkably good time, or she'd taken the old trail along the river instead of the main road. 1 mile north of Hyde River, Levi pulled off at the Old Town turnoff, a dirt road veering off to the right. The road was now blocked by a huge berm of dirt and debris to keep vehicles out. If Levi went in there, he'd be trespassing on company land. He had to go in. He nosed the Dodge up against the berm, shut her down, and continued on foot, flashlight in hand, climbing over the dirt pile and back down to the rutted road beyond. He swept his light back and forth across the road as he hurried along, hoping to find footprints, any sign that Maggie had been this way. So far, he saw nothing. She must have taken the trail along the river, he thought. Maybe, just maybe, he could get to Hyde Hall before she did, or before... A gust of wind caused him to halt. He clicked off his light and crouched down, looking skyward. Nothing up there but stars. He kept listening. The wind was blowing in small, intermittent gusts in the distance. He could hear the gentle rushing sound of the river. He was getting close. He started walking again, and soon he broke out of the old forest and into an open expanse where grass, berry thickets, and disease-crooked cottonwoods barely survived among the gutted, sagging remains of old wooden structures. Old Town. There was nothing left now but stone foundations overgrown with brush, teetering walls with no roofs to connect them, fallen piles of weathered lumber that once were homes for miners, prospectors, shopkeepers, and their families. Levi stole quietly into the town, trying to recall where everything was. He hadn't been there in a long time. Few people had. On one side, a beam and plank wall with one window was all that was left. of the Gold Dust Hotel. Across the rutted and disappearing road, a crumbling foundation outlined where the taverns once stood. Levi vaguely remembered Hyde Hall being near the other end of the town, near the river. This main road should take him there. Was that singing he heard? Or was it the wind moving through? Sorry, I thought I heard something. Was that singing he heard? Or was it the wind moving through this old place, sighing through 1,000 cracks and voids? He froze. He listened. A woman's voice. A country tune. "Maggie!" he shouted, his voice echoing down the street. "Maggie Blah!" He heard no response but the wind. He ran in the direction of that singing, hoping to hear it again, this time loud, even boisterous. It was definitely Maggie, Levi thought. "Maggie!" A gust of wind roared through the cottonwood, and they swayed crazily, clapping their limbs against one another as leaves torn loose fluttered over the town. Levi crouched and covered his head as twigs and leaves rained from above him. The singing was buried under the sound. Then Levi realized what he was hearing was not the sound of wind. No. It couldn't be what he thought it was. It couldn't be happening again. Panicked, he ran down the road, dodging crooked trees that had taken hold in the dirt street, stepping around trenches carved by years of rain. Then he heard the singing again, and some hope returned. "Maggie!" Another rush of wind rolled over Old Town like a wave, bending the cottonwood and rippling the tops of the grass beyond on its way toward the river. Levi ignored it. He continued running in the direction of Maggie's voice, and then abruptly, the song ended in the middle of a note. "Maggie!" Levi recognized Hyde Hall just ahead. Now a cracking, overgrown foundation with 3 walls leaning precariously inward, and no roof, no floor, no front. Levi flashed his light here and there, sweeping through the entire structure as he approached. In the middle of the back wall, a tall stone fireplace and chimney were the only things still vertical. Berry thickets and young willows competed where the floor used to be. Levi noticed that one wall was quivering as if it had been struck. A plank near the top of the wall, loosened over the years, clattered to the ground. He was momentarily distracted by another flashlight beam far up the road. Someone was approaching on the run, but he didn't wait to see who it was. His own beam had caught something. He stepped over the foundation wall and into the remains of Hyde Hall, then waded through the tall grass to the center of the building where his light fell on a large square stone, its top almost as flat as a table. Just beyond it, he saw Maggie's shoulder bag laying on the ground amid spatters of blood. A few yards from the bag was a running shoe, the laces still tied. Levi sank slowly to his knees beside the bag and the shoe, and his body began to shake with weeping. He heard footsteps hurrying toward him. A beam of light shone on his face, then on the ground, the shoulder bag, the shoe. It was Tracy Ellis. She was too late. "Did you see anybody?" Tracy asked. Levi shook his head. Tracy wasn't in her uniform, but she had her gun in her hand. "Well, come on, help me look and get away from that bag. It's evidence." He wiped his nose with his hand. "There's nobody here." She took only a moment to realize he would be no help and took off without him, shining her flashlight in every direction, searching, scrambling, tripping in the dark. Levi just prayed. He knew Tracy Ellis would be beating around in the brush, combing over the road and trails through Old Town, and even walking up and down the river for much of the night. He also knew she wouldn't find anything. Ooh, man, what do you guys think about that? That's the end of today's video. Have you guys got to the end of this video? Because it's a long one. If you got to the end of the video, go ahead and write down Maggie Bly. Why not? Write Maggie Bly in the comment if you made it down to the end of this video. And if you guys have any questions or concerns or whatever, discuss it in the comments with your fellow viewers. Because I'm not answering jack diddly squat. I'm going to let you guys enjoy the book as well as I enjoyed it. Well, with all that being said, I need to stop talking because my throat is dead. I will let you all go. God bless you all, and remember that Jesus loves you. Good night, and God bless you. Bye.